The Secret of Secrets, First Meditation. I affirm that my true self is spirit, is not contained within the limits of my body, had no beginning, will never end. This thing that I am is a subtle thing, underlying my ego and my sense of personal self. It is of such dimensions that I constantly must strive to understand it. It is not my body, it is not my name. It is not the identity by which the world knows me. It simply exists, unchanged by the ever-changing scenes of life, unaltered by any coloring that my ego may give it. This is my true self, and I long to know it. I still the questions and imagined hurts, the vain goals of the ego. I slide deep within myself to a pool of consciousness that rests forever in absolute stillness. In a center as small as a pinpoint, I find infinity. I look inward, and there is God. All is contained in this center of consciousness. Smaller than the small is this pinpoint, yet vaster than the vast. Here I know myself. I center in God, become detached from my personal ego. From this vantage point, I am able to look upon all things with love. I observe my ego as a person apart, with understanding, but with control. I see that I never was what I thought I was, nor was I ever different than what I truly am. My consciousness is the consciousness of God. I declare my unity with Him. I exercise no will in the things and events in my life, but concentrate always on attunement with the purpose of God. Insofar as I succeed in this, I cannot fail, for God's purpose surely will be realized. I subject my ego, I yield my will, I attune myself to the power that flows heavenward throughout the universe. Second meditation. I search for the secret of life in depths of my soul. I retire inward, away from the noises and distractions of the world. In hidden depths of darkness and peace, I find a core of my being that rests in absolute repose. There is no motion, no desire, nothing to be hoped for, nothing to lose. All roads, all paths meet and unite here. I am the center of the universe. Time and space are contracted to a movement on a pinpoint. Planets and stars, the universe itself, are contained in me. I sense all things to be myself, myself to be all things. That which lives within me, at the very core of my being, is that which lives in all others. Only one thing is at work throughout creation. Only one thing lives in all creatures. This is God. I surrender my ego, give up my will, give over my life and its works to Him. I recognize that it is He who wills in me, thinks in me, acts through me. I shed my ego, divorce myself from any notion of an isolated self. I open wide the doors to the power that flows heavenward throughout the universe. I sense this power pouring through my being, molding, sustaining, lifting my life. I become an instrument for the work of the Lord. No more do I impose my will upon the world and its people. Always I seek the will of God and attune to it. By becoming one with the will of my Creator, I attain to all power, for the purposes of God will not be denied. Each day of my life, I seek the support of my vast self. I discipline myself against the strident longings and desires of the ego. I seek no personal glory or profit, but perform all tasks for the Lord, knowing that He is the task, the performer, and the taskmaster. All solace, all profit, all glory I find in Him. Third meditation. All about me I see the infinite, eternal movement of God. In the surge of the sea, the flux of the tides, the precise patterns of the heavens, I see the purpose and presence of the Creator. He knows where he is going. All things, past, present, and future, are apparent to him. In his infinite wisdom, he sees immediately the thing to be done and the perfect method of doing it. Therefore, I turn over all my actions to him. No longer will I be guided in my daily tasks by the willful promptings of the ego, but instead I turn inward to the very center of my being and listen for the will of God. He is the master and the mover of my works. He is all that is, and I am being of his being, power of his power, conscious only of him. No more shall I hunger after the fruits of my labor. They belong to God, and I renounce all desire for them. I know that God never blunders, and he never is indifferent, and when it appears that I have failed in some immediate aim, I know it is only to prepare myself in the end for some rarer joy, some truer delight. I open myself to universal power and joy. I declare there is no limitation, no lack, no malfunction in my life. A perfect power is governing all my affairs, pervading my very body. I identify myself with that which is all-powerful, all-perfect. I throw off the limitations, hurts, and frustrations of the finite ego. In the depths of my being, I am no longer a name, a past, a place. I am pure spirit, infinite, eternal, all-encompassing. That which I truly am, I can never cease to be. I cast aside ego, become one with my Creator, live in the light and the love of the Lord. Creativeness. Creative torrents seek out the mind of the man who lives in God's grace, surge through his being, leaving a kind of thought world laid down in space. Ninth meditation. I search the inner depths of my consciousness for that haven of refuge where God and I meet and become one. The noises and insistencies of the clamoring world fade away, and I retreat even deeper through planes of being and awareness to a place of utter repose, of absolute bliss, of complete unity, where all barriers are removed between myself and the divine. I lose myself in him, and in that losing I find my greater self. He takes my being and makes it an instrument of his purpose and his power. Through my mind and spirit course the restless surging energies of God, ever unfolding, dynamically illustrating the manifold sides of his nature. Whatever impinges itself upon my awareness has a delicate and mystic meaning, and I am conscious that nothing is fully developed, finally complete, but that each thing, event, idea is but a partial revelation of a hidden and magnificent truth. To the emergence of this truth I dedicate myself, for I know that concealed in the heart of each creature is the incarnate God. Through expressing him, I discover myself. To be is to be part of God, but to grow is to become God. To that growth, to that becoming, I consecrate my life. The apparent duality of my being I surrender as partial truth. I know that my true self is the self of the divine, the one self that pervades the universe, that inhabits every being, that looks out of the eyes of every man. Through allowing this self to work through my nature, I truly become creative. I am instrument of the ultimate artistic sensibility. I know that each soul aspires to union with its Creator, that each seeks for a sign of that union through beauty, knowledge, love. By knowing the divine and loving the divine, I am assured that His power will work through me to illustrate to the world the divinity of man. Staying young forever. Spirit is the mold and flesh is the cast, and flesh is donned like a gown, styled to a fashion and not made to last. Cleave not to flesh, for all lay it down. 10th meditation. Youth is growth, and growth is the measure of receptiveness to learning. I therefore open my mind and my heart to the power of life, for that pervades the universe. I open my soul to God. He sustains my being. He uses me for His ends. In Him I center myself. Through Him I attune to life's purpose. There is a place of pure spirit at the center of my soul that is timeless, spaceless, and ageless. I anchor myself there. I resign all attachment to body and ego. These are but instruments of the divine. His spirit is not altered by entering a particular body, is not changed by the delusions of any ego, but remains always one and indivisible, above suffering and pain and effort and strife. Infinite serenity and omnipotence mark divine spirit, and they are qualities of my potential self, for divine spirit dwells within me. It is God in me who saves me from the flesh, who preserves me from death, who gives me immortality. It is God in me who is strong, wise, omnipotent. I clear the channels between myself and Him, displace the ego, make it subservient. My life takes on the luster of Him who guides it. Joy accompanies me on every quest, for I know that I shall find growth and wisdom. What strain, what struggle, what pain and hardship can there possibly be in this life that is but an infinitesimal second in the eternity of my existence? Never born, never dying, never aging, the spirit within me keeps me young forever. Mystic powers of the mind. Winged thoughts that are loosed in space, on planes that the eye cannot see. Shape coming events, appoint time and place for the things that will happen to thee. 11th meditation. Behind the world of the senses are higher planes of consciousness, where the true causes of things exist. I affirm that these higher places are within me, that my destiny is to know them, that they will reveal themselves to me insofar as I surrender my being and will and purpose to God. I know that the truth of objects is not completely revealed by my senses, that there is hidden significance in all things. I know that in actuality there are no inanimate objects, that each thing consists of arrested consciousness. I know this consciousness proceeds out of the mind and being of God, and that in its pure form it is idea only, awareness only, similar, even identical to my own. Therefore I affirm my oneness with all things. In all I perceive the indwelling presence. He resides in the tree, the flower, the bird, the beast, in my neighbor. He is the observer that sits in the center of each creature who is never restricted by the restrictions of form. I am not I in a true and real sense, but my consciousness is the consciousness of God. Where I fail to expand to meet this awareness, there I limit myself to the form and circumstance of ordinary life. Therefore, I take refuge in the body and being of God. I stand apart from my own strivings and concerns and desires, and am not identified with them, but watch them. They are not me. They are the warp and woof of life's longing for itself, the inevitable result of conflict and aspiration and effort and failure. And though I exist in the midst of all and participate in all, still I am not touched. And by that very detachment, there is unloosened through my nature the power and the purpose of the divine. His vaster being, his greater consciousness, manifest through me. Mastery over life. Stand not apart from the maker of all. 'Tis illusion for thee to be awed by a spiritual self that is 10 miles tall. He is thee, thou art he, the indwelling God. 12th meditation. I resign the domination of the ego and surrender my life to God. I renounce the priority of sensual stimuli and find within my own nature the power to originate thought, feeling, action. No longer do I exist as reflex to events around me, but now I take up that larger existence that descends from higher planes of mind and spirit. I ally myself with First Cause. I identify myself with God. I make my life a living sacrifice to Him, surrendering each of my thoughts, feelings, and actions without desire for their fruits. No longer am I armored of the vain desires of the ego. Fame and money and applause are not ends in themselves, and when sought as such are traps from which pain and suffering eventually ensue. I penetrate myself to that core of consciousness that is pure being. There I take refuge, turning away from all strident demands of the beckoning surface self, yielding my identity to God. Yet I do not lose it. My I remains, is not engulfed, but now takes on greater awareness, an eternal significance. I expand outward from the center of myself, beyond all horizons, beyond all limitations, seeking to include that which formerly included me, so that I may know God not only by penetrating Him, but also by containing Him. Thus I am led into a mystic resolution of myself with the divine, and He and I become one. By special deputation from above, I am forthwith able to live a divine life upon earth. I seek not to change that which is ordained, but only to understand, to possess identical consciousness with all, and in that identical consciousness to act in accordance with divine will, equal-souled to all results, existing always above the conflict, secure in the knowledge of union with God. I accept the power of God the universal supreme. I let it guide me and work within me with faith and serenity.